Welcome to this video on the topic of sources of recruitment. When a job vacancy arises, there are essentially two methods that an employer may use to recruit staff to fill the vacancy. These are quite simply internal recruitment and external recruitment. Obviously, there are only the two ways to move. To recruit from staff internally, or to recruit a new person, a person from outside of the organisation, and bring them in to do the required tasks. So let's look at internal recruitment to start. Now, this occurs when a vacancy arises and is filled from an employee within the business. So internal is a vacancy arises, a job needs to be undertaken, needs to be completed, a new set of tasks have been identified perhaps, and an employee from within the organisation is found suitable and is moved into that capacity. The organisation may feel that a particular employee is suitable for the job role. For example, an employee may have had additional training which makes them suitable for the job. Mainly it's a fact, however, that the organisation knows the person, knows the person's background, has had experience of working with that person, knows how good they are at timekeeping and their productivity and their attitudes and how they work with others and so on. So there's a lot of knowledge about the person, and that is why that internal recruitment is so popular and so favoured by many companies. There are three types of internal sources of recruitment. There are transfers, moving from one part of the organisation to the other. Perhaps a horizontal transfer, in other words, no promotion involved or demotion, just simply moving from one part to the other. There could be promotion. It's a different type of recruitment, because additional skills and additional processes may be sought to be put in place to train the person to fulfill the new role. Or it could be re-employment of someone who has previously left the organisation, someone who has perhaps worked for the company and has left and now is brought back into the company. So these are classified as internal sources of recruitment. Now, there are various methods an organisation may use to advertise a vacancy. Of course, they could use the intranets. If an intranet is used widely at work, then simply putting an advertisement or a notification on the intranet is one way of publicising the existence of a vacancy. Generally, it was traditional in many companies, certainly in the past, to put internal opportunities, internal moves, or internal recruitment requirements, put these notifications onto a notice board, perhaps in a staff room, or even where people enter the building and leave the building, so they're in a prominent position for staff to see. It can happen, of course, at staff meetings, simply an announcement that there is a vacancy in a certain area. If anyone is interested, please apply, etc. It could be word of mouth. It could be that when a job has been identified and when the vacancy has been identified, that the management simply tell line operators and line management that the vacancy exists, and ask to see if anyone is interested in applying for the position. Sometimes companies have magazines and newsletters which they use to help them in their communications processes, and they may simply insert the existence of the vacancy on a newsletter or a magazine. Now, the advantages of internal recruitment, well, provides employees with an opportunity for career progression through promotion. So it's a motivating factor. The employees see an opportunity to promote themselves, to move within the organisation and to move upwards perhaps within the organisation. But the organisation is also, as I said earlier, aware of the employees' capabilities. So the organisation knows the employees from their work records and from what they've achieved and what they've done, and how they relate to the company and how they relate to each other at work, and are the good members of the team and so on. So the organisation has a lot of information about the employees from experience, and therefore is able to make a more informed judgment about filling the vacancy. Staff members won't need much training, and of course they're familiar with the surroundings and the work environment. So there's a big saving on induction, on bringing a new member of staff into place. They don't have to be trained, they don't have to be introduced to the company and the processes of the company and the procedures and so on. They're familiar with all of this, so that there is a considerable saving in internal recruitment. It's cheaper and a faster way of recruiting. Now the disadvantages, well, another vacancy arises due to the member of staff being promoted or transferred. So there still is a recruitment issue. If the organisation has a vacancy and promotes somebody up to fill the vacancy, that person has now left, if you like, left a hole. That person's left a vacancy behind, which must be filled. So there is a knock-on. The promoted person will have left a space that needs to be filled. It can lead to resentment amongst staff who are not promoted. Sometimes when teams are working well together and one member of the team is then promoted, the rest of the team may feel alienated and may feel cut off from the organisation, feel they're not valued, feel that their efforts were not taken into account. So it may lead to resentment. Of course, it's also the case that if the company decides to promote internally, they're not looking at the full set of available skills, because candidates from the outside are not taken into account, and the candidates from the outside may have better qualifications and may have more experience and may bring in new ways of thinking and make additional contributions. So promoting internally may save, but it may not be the best in the long run. The best in the long run may be to advertise the position internally and externally and see who applies and who's interested, and in that way a wider range of applicants may be considered and perhaps the best one selected. By the use of internal recruitment, the organisation is restricted from new ideas coming into the business, as I said earlier. So the person promoted internally will bring the values from that section and from that person's experiences and so on. So there's nothing new, there's no new source of innovation or no new ideas coming in. And that's a disadvantage of internal recruitment. Now, external recruitment. Well, external recruitment is the opposite of internal, so no surprise there. This means going outside to try and recruit an appropriate person. It involves posting job vacancies for candidates outside of the business, perhaps in trade magazines or on the press or different sources, and we'll look at these in a few moments. This method is suitable for organisations that are growing and need extra staff to meet organisational goals and objectives. So it's important that the organisation looks outside of itself to see what skills and what talents are available and tries to get those into the organisation. Now let's look at the methods used for external recruitment. Well, job centres, they provide a service through the auspices of the government. They provide a service of trying to link job applicants with employers and try to match up skills and competencies and talents that are available within the wider workforce and match those up with the requirements of industry and commerce. So job centres are a valuable source of recruitment. It's a free service from employers and helps them to find the employees in semi-skilled, clerical and manual jobs, mostly in those areas, but it's a free service provided by the government. It's paid for by the taxpayer. The employer posts an advert with the agency. The agency then shortlists candidates on their register in terms of suitability for the job role. So the job centre does part of the selection. It looks at the people registered with them who are looking for work and looks at the requirements of the company and then tries to match the two and draw up a shortlist. So it's a valuable service. It's a good service. Headhunters, well, this would be really for the more senior members of management, and generally speaking it applies to workers who are currently employed, perhaps employed at fairly senior levels within companies, and then headhunters try to offer them better conditions and get them to move to a different company. It's a specialist recruitment agency or agencies. They focus on employees with good career reputations. They're really looking for the best to try and get the best workers into companies, and of course they're engaged in the search and selection of the appropriate employees, but they are a very expensive source of recruitment, as I'll mention again second. So it's a costly process in finding the right candidate for the job role. It's a very elite process. Colleges and universities are always good for external recruitment. Organisations use this approach to recruit graduates who have just left or are about to leave university. These students have new ideas and enthusiasm, they're fresh blood, they're just out of education, they're enthusiastic, so they're good for the organisation. Companies like newness and like people to bring innovative ideas and new ideas. To some extent, the new ideas may not be acceptable, but it's simply nice to have enthusiastic staff who want to make contributions and who come up with ideas. And that's far preferable to a staff who just routinely does the work and goes home and comes back and routinely does the work again. So companies are looking for newness, and for that reason students are an attractive option. Recruitment events are held in campus to attract student attention. In the UK it's commonplace to have employers visit universities and put on small exhibitions of the products they're making and the type of work they're offering, and there's good relationships between universities and colleges and employers, particularly in the UK, where most colleges and universities have an external relations department who deals with employers and looks at employers' requirements and feed those back into course design, into teaching and learning, and into the structure of the courses. So generally speaking, students are being prepared for professional work and to work in demanding situations. They're capable of doing it, and they've also got the enthusiasm of being students, and the newness of the whole process makes them enthusiastic and interested. So It's a win-win situation. Of course, it doesn't apply to all courses, what I've just said. Some people may be studying ancient history. Well, clearly, uh, perhaps some careers like law or some of the areas in administration in companies may be more interesting to them, and the companies will want to select on that basis. But generally speaking, whatever the career choice of the candidate, there's usually a company or functions within companies to accommodate that person. Methods used for external recruitment. Well, advertising. It's very popular to place an advertisement in national newspapers or in magazines or even local newspapers and hope that this person, the right person, will read it and apply for the position. So looking at newspapers, posting vacancies on a job site, perhaps online, internet publishing ads on specialist websites. If the company is looking for a sound engineer, then perhaps posting advertisement on websites that deal with sound equipment and video production and so on, that may attract the right candidate, and it's been selective. Put it in magazines, perhaps specialist magazines related to particular trades or particular professions. Now, the methods used for external recruitment, well, recommendation from employees. It could be word of mouth. It could be people working in the company recommend a particular vacancy, a particular job to their friends because they know their friends have the right attributes, the right qualities to take on the work. So it could travel from employees within the company by word of mouth into the wider community. The candidate can be recommended from a work colleague, as I said. That's quite a popular way of recruiting, particularly in a regional context. When there's a large employer within a regional area, then employees within that large organisation may want to tell their family members or their friends or neighbours or whatever that a vacancy has come up. It is word of mouth. It's passing on the information through contact. Agencies can also be used. It's a type of business which specialises in recruitment and selection of candidates. The companies may go to particular agencies and inform the agencies that they want a particular type of person with particular skills, itemize those skills and leave it with the agency. The agency will then try to find a person to fill that vacancy, and of course the agency will charge the company for the search that it has undertaken. The recruitment agencies often have a specific sector such as finance, business, education, health. They try to shorten their own search routines by building up expertise in certain areas. So they may specialize in finance. And that means, of course, that personnel, people with particular financial qualifications, may want to go to that agency. But likewise, employers who want to find a particular financial person with financial background, will go to that agency as well. So it shortens the search. It facilitates the search. It's not a general agency. It's got a particular expertise. They aim to provide their customers with either permanent, temporary or interim employees. So the agencies can be quite flexible. Sometimes employers don't want a full-time member of staff. They want somebody who will work 2 days a week. Or sometimes they want someone who will just do particular tasks as and when they're required. And agencies may have that facility. They may be able to attract people who want to work like that. So again, it's something that companies will find difficult to find for themselves, so it may be better to offer it to an agency. Appropriate candidates are selected from a shortlist of people registered with the agency. So again, the agency, similar to what I said about the government agency earlier, this agency will in part do some of the selection for the company. It will shortlist appropriate candidates and perhaps even interview them and try and figure if they are best for the company, if they are the ones that will best suit the requirements of the company. So they're partially doing the selection, and perhaps the company will only see a very small number of candidates in the end out of perhaps a large number who originally applied. The large number were whittled down by the agency down to the few that were put forward. The fees can be high, but it's a fast service, and generally speaking it's quite a reliable service. So the agencies charge the companies for what they do. Now, the advantages of external recruitment. It prevents any form of resentment developing amongst employees, such as favourites, because somebody's brought in from the outside. If it was a situation where someone was recruited internally, it may cause jealousy and upset working relationships. It may lead to the breakup of working teams. So when someone's brought in from the outside, the existing team are not upset. The balance is not upset, and work can continue. So it avoids any problems such as these. It can bring in new ideas, skills, knowledge. I mentioned students earlier. Students are excellent for bringing in ideas. As I said, not all of the ideas may be practical or acceptable, but at least they're bringing in ideas, and that's to be encouraged. They're interested, they want to be noticed, they want to make their ideas known to management. So that's to be encouraged. Out of all the ideas that flow in this way, perhaps one or two might be really significant and could lead to a change in the organisation. External recruitment leads to a more dynamic and a greater diversity in the workplace. New employees coming in from the outside bring in new experiences and backgrounds, and they're more interesting in a sense. When a workforce has remained constant for a long period of time, they all know each other and they know their routines and they know their skills and their abilities and they know their personalities and so on. In a sense, it can become a little boring. Having someone in from the outside, it's a newness. It wakens everyone's up, and they're bringing in new skills, new experiences, and it's more interesting. There is a situation where recruiting from the outside promotes competition and a desire to promote themselves internally. So the workers inside think, why are they recruiting from the outside when we are here? Well, perhaps the existing workforce do not have the appropriate skills, they have not retrained significantly, or they haven't shown a great deal of interest in the product or the business. So to get around this, perhaps the existing workforce will become more interested, will try to add to their skill sets, will compete amongst each other, will try to be noticed. So it leads to a more dynamic workforce, a workforce that's trying harder and trying to show off what they can do. So it's that they are noticed, and this will preempt recruitment from the outside. This will remove the possibility of recruitment from the outside. The management will look and say, we have already got a highly motivated workforce. they're increasing their own skill levels, they're retraining, they're engaged. So there's no need to recruit from outside. That's a possibility. So the threat of external recruitment may lead to more initiative and more retraining on the part of the existing staff. Now, the disadvantages of external recruitment. First of all, it's a costly business and it takes time. So external recruitment can run into weeks or even months. So it has to be planned and carefully thought out. So it's a costly process and certainly a time-consuming one. It's a longer process and takes time to fill a vacancy. The process itself, even once a person's been isolated and found acceptable to come into the business, filling the vacancy, that person will have to perhaps honour his or her contract with their existing employer, have to work out a notice period. They may move locations. They may have to move from one part of the country to the other, and it's a longer process. It's not easy. Obviously, it depends on the nature of the job and the level at which we're talking about. If it's a very senior position, it could take a long time for this to happen. And the new employees will have to be inducted into the business, and there will have to be training programs. Again, costly. The HR section will have to prepare training programs and health and safety issues and issues about the contract and discipline at work, and various points have to be put across. And these all have to be codified and presented clearly to the person coming in. So there has to be an induction. It's costly. It's not a cheap exercise. There is a concern that new employees may not fit in, and they can become outcasts from groups of staff. That's a possibility. The new member of staff coming in, his or her personality does not suit the culture of the business, does not suit the culture of the workers in that particular area. They have got to know each other over a period of time. They know how they work, they know their backgrounds, they're all friends, and now a new person has been introduced. That new person may not fit in, and that may be an issue as well. So these are some of the issues involved in sources of recruitment, bringing in people from outside or recruiting people internally. And that's all we're going to deal with in this session. So I'm going to leave this video here and say thank you for watching.